Serving up opinions on a silver platter, it's a grind. The information getting, bringing your got so hot you'll be sweating. These two dudes with attitudes will put you in the mood for a plate full of brain food. So don't delay, my daughter, my son. Visit the buffet called Promoter 101.
Welcome back to the Promoter 101 podcast. So excited for this, the 247th episode of this podcast. Today, we're going to be joined by Pinnacle Entertainment's Scott Sokol on the show, talking boutique agencies, big artists, and the ins and outs of the talent business.
Plus, we're going to break down the latest in the industry headlines.
You're listening to Promoter 101 podcast starting right now.
This is Cindy Leinott. I work at Works Entertainment, and I'm on Promoter 101.
Want more Promoter 101? Check out past episodes anytime at promoter101.com.
Got something on your mind? Maybe some questions, ideas, feedback? Drop us a line at Steiny at promoter101.net.
And of course, come join us online. The show on X is at Promoter 101. Me, I'm at W. Luke Pierce. Dan is at The Jew. Over on Instagram and Threads, the show is at Steiny Promoter 101. Dan is at Dan Presents, and I'm at W. Luke Pierce.
Seems like it's time. UFC has made the jump from X to Threads on their feed now. It seems like maybe the industry and the world have left X behind, and maybe we should follow suit, Luke.
You know, listen, I think there's still a very weird and odd conversation happening on X. I will say X still remains an undefeated, hilarious, and dangerous place. It is an awesome part of the corner of the internet. But when it comes down to some work, some thought leadership, I think it's over on Threads.
The world evolves, and so must we, Luke.
Come find us. Check us out online.
I am Barbara Hubbard from New Mexico State, retired, still raising scholarships through my ACTS program at Las Cruces, New Mexico, and around the nation wherever I can produce a concert that will sell a ticket. We're in Promoter 101.
Luke, shall we dive into the latest industry news?
Dan, we got a wild range of news this month here, but I want to start with this news because it's kind of breaking as we're recording the podcast over the weekend here. On Friday, Bonnaroo announced it's not happening in 2027. C3 and Live Nation put that out on August 21st, and the language was a much-needed year off. The farm, they said, and the main venue in particular, needs to rest and recover. Rolling Stone and Stereogum report the plan as a 28 return. The statement itself didn't promise one, but plenty of things leading up into this in Bonnaroo. The road in 2025 pretty much died in the vine after one day of flooding. They opened at 75% refunds, ate a 6,000 name petition, and went to 100%. They spent real money on the site, improving it after all the disasters in 25. And then new drainage, 4.5 miles of road, 135 acres of new grass. In June 2026, still evacuated on Sunday, and they lost 11 sets. So, Dan, is this an act of God story, or is it a capital expenditure story? I mean, Live Nation bought Superfly's stake in the second half of in 2019, coming off a record-setting 80,000 capacity sellout. Attendance between 21 without COVID and 23, kind of running right around 85,000 people, falling closer to 70,000 in 2024. And of course, those figures are unofficial, so hold them loosely. When you spend that kind of money on drainage and you lose a day out of 4, and the next ask is 8 figures to make a flood plan behave, I think that's a hard pill to swallow for Live Nation. This is something that I think there's always been conversations around this. Dates usually land in June. It's historically rainy and terrible here in the state of Tennessee during that time. So it talks about moving this to the fall. So, do we think 28 is an intention or a guarantee? Is Bonnaroo going to come back smaller on a reconfigured site? Does it come back at all? What do you think about this, Dan?
Well, as you said, Live Nation does own the site. On top of that, Charlie Walker, Ted Heinig, their teams have done an amazing job bringing that festival back to current and cool, where it's like they had these moments where it was super hip, then it kind of cooled off and they brought it back. They've definitely done some stuff with that space during COVID. They used it for outdoor shows, and they've done some other festivals in there. There was a metal festival that Guns N' Roses headlined that they tried on that site. They have the property, the infrastructure's there. I don't see them walking away from it. I think it's frustrating that you do build the festival, you sell the tickets, you get the fans there, and then Mother Nature has another idea. And when it happens a couple years in a row, hard to expect fans to come back. That said, I haven't talked to the Tarleys. I haven't talked to Michael about it. I haven't talked to Ted, but hard to believe Bonnaroo is done. Keep in mind that Glastonbury takes a year off, plays like 3, then takes a year off to rotate the field and let the field protect itself. So it's not unheard of for a festival to take a year off, let the site take care of itself. It's a big piece of property. Maybe do some refreshing, maybe do some big infrastructure improvements, and then regroup and rebrand a little bit and bring it back. I don't think we've seen the last of this event, and I think Charlie Walker's team is going to figure this one out.
Yeah. I think you're right about that, Dan. I think this is something that the Bonnaroovians, I'm sure, is a tight-knit community of people that want to see the success of this thing continue on. And if it takes a couple of years off, those people are still going to be there. You know, in the short term, the city of Manchester, Tennessee, going to take a hit. But for environmental reasons, which we just talked about here for a second, Dan, just weather in general, kind of pivoting for a half second here into another piece I want to spend some time talking about, because weather's, at least in the last 6 weeks, it stopped becoming small talk and it's turned into some sort of line item for all of us. And I know you, from your own personal experience, you had Hurricane Lala hit the Big Island of Hawaii as a Category 1 about a week ago, as at the time of recording this podcast. It was a direct hit near South Point, 80-mile-an-hour winds, 200,000 people without power. The Midwest has been cooking since June. Cooling centers open, cities pulling outdoor events, heat indexes that turn a 2 o'clock load into like real safety problems. You know, what that looks like on our side, kind of unglamorous. You know, amphitheater dates carry a risk profile they probably didn't carry 5 years ago. You're advancing weather, you're advancing shade, extra medical, a heat plan that somebody's going to actually own on site. You know, you're watching a radar at 10 in the morning on a day you've already spent the money on. The day of call is ugly in both directions. Cancel, you're eating the settlement, push through, somebody goes down the pit. That's a very different conversation. And then there's the paper. There's event cancellation coverage has gotten pricier. They've gotten pickier on the carrier side. And the named storm and extreme heat exclusions are turning up where they just didn't used to be. So that slides risks back to producers and promoters, and then, of course, down to the artists. So weather, Dan, I mean, to talk about Brad Williams, it's kind of weird that Hawaii got a hurricane. It's like an El Nino year, but like weather is becoming a thing this
I mean, like over 20 years, there was a direct hit on one of the islands. They get the warnings all the time, but you have all the different models and it always goes the other way, right? So no one was really expecting it. This is the first time I've been in the path of the hurricane personally. I will tell you that we knew the show was going to play out before the weather, but then we got to the point where there was a state of emergency called and Hilo was going to get hit before the Kona side of the island. And the venue at that point was like, okay, we have an issue. What about people trying to get home? What about the rain starting versus the eye getting here? We're a little worried about this. And I got to tell you, the island had such a brave face on. The locals never let it slip that they were worried about it until they were. And it was the afternoon of the show when it was like, hey, we're worried about the fans. And the second they were worried about the fans, it took Brad and me 3 seconds to be like, let's move the show and get it out of the way. And we found a time to come back in January, and we're going to put up a second show because we were already sold out. And Brad's going to not only make it back to the island, but, you know, deliver on the demand that was there. And we'll do the double. I will say that Hilo got really hit and their power outages were massive and roads were washed out. And that's going to take a long time to recover. The volcano did a lot to protect the Kona side of the island, so they didn't get it nearly as bad. But, you know, they're going to get hit a second time and the weather is coming. I'm watching it on the news right now that they're looking at a second hit where they're still rebuilding and putting the power back up. So, I mean, this is one of those exhausting things where it's just like you've been without power for a week, maybe you're just getting it back on. The roads aren't still open across the island. And now you're worried about a second hit. Like, that kills supply lines, especially when you're an island, and it's dangerous. So first and foremost, protect the fans. Entertainment's always secondary towards the health and protection of the fans, but whether you're on an island or whether you're in the Midwest, you never want to see an issue where someone goes out for a night of entertainment and the weather changes people's lives in a massive way. So you're always thinking, long term. And it's not about the dollar at that point. It's about the long term effect and history, right? You don't want to change the world history of somebody's life because you were getting a show in. It's like, move the fucking date, protect the fan, protect the artist, protect the venue, live to promote another day.
Yeah. So just like some more specifics on that. You're obviously going to roll 2 next time through, right?
Yeah, we're going to be back in January 16. We haven't announced the new show because we got the cancellation update out immediately. Like, this is the new date. Hold your tickets. Please don't come out in the weather.
Yeah.
And then we'll announce once all the weather's passed and everybody's back up and running, we'll put the second show on sale. But I want the venue to get back on their feet, and we'll worry about announcing a new show. Yeah, technically the show's not announced yet, so we broke it here. Night 2 will be added in on the Big Island with Brad Williams in January.
So you're out some costs, Brad's out some costs. Is this like a triggering of an insurance thing to seek anything back from that? Or is it the type of thing where we just eat it and move on?
No, it's such a small thing. It's just like, we'll make up the show. The venue's, in on it with us, where they're not going to charge us for moving the date. It's like, it's an act of God. We're protecting the fans. Everybody's working together. So, we'll put some extra travel in there, and Brad will get a second show fee, and, we'll eat some travel from the support and the production guys. And, there'll be a little bit more catering and a second runner day. It's like a couple guys will get paid. We'll eat it. It's not that much money.
But for these producers and promoters putting on outdoor shows in the United States, I mean, I've seen crazy heat moments happening in Europe. 20-something festivals, according to Polestar, are already impacted by this sort of stuff here. For those producers producing things in extreme weather conditions here in the United States, have you talked to anyone that you think has had an experience here that's been, Bonnaroo-esque at this point this year? Any stories out there?
Look, the insurance on rain and weather is very expensive, and not everybody gets it. And it's very well defined on how much rain you have to have before a payment goes into effect. So the date, the time, the number of inches, where you're recording those inches are all part of that. And it's expensive, and not everyone actually takes the insurance. Like, a lot of people just roll the dice without it. And I don't want to confuse event insurance, liability insurance with cancellation insurance, weather insurance.
Two different things.
I'm not saying people are doing events without insurance. I'm saying people are doing events without cancellation insurance. And that happens more often than you think now, because it's super expensive, and the rain or shine idea is there until it's unsafe. And that it's so extreme. It's like worse than anybody would have thought on the bell curve. And it's just like, okay, we're paradigm shifting our expectations. This is worse than rain or shine. This is dangerous. And we're not going to put people in a little bit. It's one thing to get wet at the show. It's another thing to get swept away by the water in the show when the landslide happens. So, the difference in extreme there versus play it out, it's just a little water.
Yeah, no doubt.
You hurt your knee, rub some dirt on it, kid, versus you broke your knee.
Right.
There are different extremes here, right? So whether you get the cancellation insurance, whether you had enough rain, it's like, do you file a claim if you have a car accident? How big of an accident was it? How big is your deductible? Can you just pay it yourself so your rates don't go up? Does it matter? These are all the little things that you start to think about, right? So it's a matter of, do they have it? Are they going to use it? Did they get enough? Did they fall exactly in the, it's like, I like to think of it as being at the roulette table. Did you bet exactly right on red 17 and did it hit? Because that's kind of what cancellation insurance is. It's like, you're kind of betting to make sure everything is good. If the show sells out, it's show costs, it's a line item. If it doesn't and you're losing, maybe you cut that thing a couple months out when you're dying, and you're going to lose on the event anyway. So, and the indoor shows, you don't normally see it anyway, but on the outdoor festival shows or the big outdoor shows, it sometimes comes into play, but it definitely is a producer decision, and not everybody does it, especially some of the bigger independents.
Yeah, listen, I mean, I've seen, and this is of course depending on your underwriter and what part of the country you're doing the event in and time of year and all those things. I mean, they have wonderful actuarial tables on all this stuff based on
Yeah,
historical.
not everybody's writing the paper on that stuff anymore either.
Yeah. It's gone from like, low 1-2% of gross, on your premiums to like upwards of like 5-8%. And if you're making 20% on a festival, like on margin, like 5-8% for like underwriting this is like eating a quarter of your margin just to protect yourself from complete downside. I mean, it's a real business decision to make on the cancellations. That's just, again, cancellation side, not liability side.
Yeah. And no one should be doing events without liability insurance.
Yeah.
Ever.
Something to pay attention to here as we wind down the summer season and start to get back from outside to inside later here in the year.
Fair enough. Moving on, Luke. What else you got?
So Dan, we got a couple little AI roundup going here and some stories here. 2 AI stories that I wanted to talk about this month, pointing in opposite directions here. First one from earlier in August, Suno, the AI company, signed a licensing deal with BMG covering all publishing and recorded music that cleared Suno's prior use to the use of that catalog in training of its AI model. I have a few artists signed at BMG and they're offering up all these participation incentives right now. So artists can choose, if you're signed to BMG, to opt in if you're a songwriter or an artist. They haven't disclosed the terms I can tell this to artists. They haven't disclosed them publicly in anything here, but Suno's license model is still slated to release later this year. And that's the second deal that's coming forth here. Warner had previously signed and settled back in November of last year. But then 5 days later, after the BMG deal announced, Roundhill Music went the other way. They filed 2 lawsuits, both in California, one against Suno, which also names Bright Data, which is a data scraping outfit for copyright infringement. The other one was against Anthropic, the parent company of Claude. Same core claims in both lawsuits: copyright infringement, DMCA violations for circumventing access, and stripping copyright management information off of all files. They filed over 500 compositions apiece as both bellwethers, and they say it will amend up to more than 10,000 by the time the suit is done. At $150,000 per work for willful infringement, that's an exposure close to $1 billion for both of those companies. Richard Bush was hired as trial counsel, and the CEO of Roundhill, Josh Gruss, said they have no intention of selling either of these things. So something that's going to play out here. And here's why I think it's important to care. Major recorded music companies are cutting deals, and those deals are set and priced privately with no public information attached to them. Roundhill is betting that the number is bigger in front of a jury. So whoever turns out to be right is going to set that rate card for every catalog standard behind them, including yours if you are a writer or a songwriter or an artist or representing one of those people. And I've read the opt-in language in the BMG structure. The choice sits with the artists. That's real leverage. Artists can say, even BMG did a deal, but I still don't want my works included in these AI training things here. So not really anyone's arguing anymore about whether these companies use the catalog. That fight's over. What's left is who gets paid, how much, and whether a boardroom or a courtroom decides it. These companies getting so large, profitable, heading for public markets here later in the year. In Anthropic's case, I think it's something that we're going to have to pay a lot of attention to, and there's plenty of money being made off the backs of songwriters and artists in these businesses that need to be counted for, Dan. So it's a story we'll pay attention to.
I love Plenty of Money.
You like the Plenty of Money headliner? That's a good one.
It's I think the best part of that story is the Plenty of Money. I think the podcast should, be eligible to sell our catalog too at some point.
Would you opt into the licensing deal, Dan? I think
We've always given the podcast away. I was just kidding. It's a labor of love. We've never put $1 on the podcast intentionally. It's there for everyone. It's our payback to the industry and our thank you for allowing us the life that we live.
Well, if we do spot any willful infringements at $150,000 a pop, Dan, it might make sense just to, cash in with everybody else. What do you think?
It's all well and good to give back until the money gets real.
Exactly. Let's talk about some other media news here. Brooklyn Vegan basically gone, and most of Alternative Press and Revolver went with it. The company that did that is, of course, the parent company Veeps, owned by Live Nation. Here's what happened. In the first week of August, Veeps, which is the live streaming company started by the Madden brothers, announced that they're cutting all editorial staff at the famed and loved independent outlet Brooklyn Vegan, as well as alternative press Revolver, Goldmine, and Metal Edge. Veeps, of course, the live streaming company that Joel and Benji Men founded in 2007, that Live Nation bought a majority stake in 2021. The magazines got pulled under that roof sometime last year. The numbers seem to be contested, Dan. I really can't find anything straight on this. I'll give you both what I'm finding. Music Business Worldwide reporting that 7 people got cut across 5 titles and about 25 editorial staff are still on sites on publishing. There are people that work there that tell it differently. Senior editors Bill Pierce and Andrew Sacker said almost the entire Brooklyn Vegan staff is gone. Amanda Hatfield said 15 years came to an end, and reporters trying to reach anyone found the Brooklyn email Revolver, Metal Edge emails bouncing. So the sites are still up, but it seems like almost nobody made it. And we haven't really seen much commentary from Veeps around this. So if you're out there plugging a book or a show or a tour or anything else, Brooklyn Vegan was where the 250 cap tour announce kind of would generally land, right? It's not a press release that's going into the void. There's a listing of real people that people actually read. Revolver and Alternative Press did that for metal, for pop punk, for kids who found a whole life in a record review. And I didn't really see much replace that in the modern age of things. There's an algorithm. The algorithm doesn't care what your band, if your band sold out Bowery or not. I think people do look around at that. And there was plenty of comments from industry professionals out there in the world. Jacob Danneman saying, RIP Brooklyn Vegan, utterly unceremonious and moronic actions by Veeps. Haley Williams from Paramore posted, every day we lose recipes to dorks who simply cannot cook. Looking forward to the inevitable vengeance of the underground. So some smoke there coming from the publicists, some smoke coming from artists there, Dan. These were things that were built before the Good Charlotte guys got in the mix in these things, and then bought under a tech company, and now kind of in a very Succession Volter-esque fashion, if those of you are fans of that show understand that reference, completely got it. Coverage stopped becoming journalism. It's just a funnel. And funnels get optimized. Editorial gets cut. This is a cycle we've seen ad infinitum in media these days, but I just feel like it's a little bit of the scene losing memory here, Dan. I don't know how you feel about any of these outlets, or if you ever read or were on all these outlets. I know Brooklyn Vegan for me in the early 2010s, Revolver, places like that were places I actually looked for this stuff, but does it carry the weight anymore? Is an important thing that we need to be talking about.
So All Fair Press is a massive publication. And yeah, Brooklyn Vegan's big. So I didn't know Veeps had rolled that stuff in under them. I mean, Benji's out with Good Charlotte with his brother out in the road. I mean, they're out with doing co-headline dates with Avenged Sevenfold. They're in Denver tonight and Salt Lake City tomorrow or on Tuesday. Phoenix this coming week, as well as LA, which I believe Data Remember is also on that show on the 30th next Sunday. So they're out there doing big shows. Hard to manage the shop and headline a massive amphitheater or stadium tour that they're doing. So, maybe this is a cost to that, but I did not realize they were doing both. But I had massive hopes for Veeps. What they were doing during COVID was super cool. And obviously they brought the credibility of them being massive artists to Veeps. So hopefully, there's a rebrand and redecision on what's going on with the streaming stuff, and there's some focus there to keep building. But yeah, I had no idea. So the layoffs are news to me, like as far as they had eaten up those brands.
Yeah, quite a few under the Veeps umbrella, it seems like there. And it does seem like a lot of like I said, the scene losing its memory, it's tough.
That's what's happening with media, right? Not at every level. It's hard to sustain financially. And how do you pay those salaries when nobody's paying for subscription services anymore, and you're getting all the articles for free in real time online? Even if you're hiding it behind a paywall, you're seeing the headline on the streamers, and that's all anybody reads anyway.
Yeah.
Hate a good paywall.
I
do love the weeklies and print, and historically the old ads that broke the shows that used to be the Bibles every week that we've seen go the way of the dodo over the last 20 years. It was such a big deal. We'd memorize the weeklies, who was playing where and what we were competing with and who was in town, and we'd know every venue. And now bands come through town, and unless you're on their site or on their socials, you don't know, because nobody's reading the weeklies unless there's something else driving it. Like Denver, the Westward is completely run now by ads for the dispensaries. And the only reason it's still read weekly is because the deals for the dispensaries is a big deal in Denver.
Yep. The weeklies with strong editorials, still great places to find stuff. I know I read the Nashville Scene here pretty regularly, but it's got fantastic editorial and like writers on staff that are capable journalists writing great pieces that are worth reading. And so outlets like that across the United States, I mean, there's got to be a crazy number of falling weeklies here in the last 10, 15 years. And it's thankful for advertiser bases like dispensaries in Colorado or real estate companies in Nashville keeping these things alive. For sure.
I believe we did a podcast. Scott Tobias from Village Voice Media Group, who oversees the Westward in Denver, was on episode 53 of Promoter 101. Goes back 200 episodes. But Scott would probably be a great guy to get on the podcast and get his viewpoints of what's going on in this day and age with how you keep a media company alive when print is a secondary form and it's all online. And I'm sure he would talk to us about how they're driving digital.
Yeah, we should do a revisit with Scott for sure.
Good dude. Yeah, I think that would be timely.
Well, last but not least in the news here, Dan, and other news of companies closing down. R.I.P. Columbia House. Columbia House, after 71 years, the company that sold you a CD or a cassette for 9 cents finally turned the lights off. If you're under 30, if you're under 40, really, this means nothing to you. If you're not, you definitely remember the ad, right? 12 CDs for a penny. You peel those little stamps off the page, stick them on a card, tape an actual penny to it, and you mail it in. Free music. You felt like you were getting something awesome, right? You weren't. The fine print said you owed them 8 more at a regular club price, so the club price was never regular, and shipping and handling is where they got you. And if you forgot to mail the card back, congrats. Here's a selection of the month and whatever, Michael Bolton or whatnot. But I think a whole generation of people built their first record collection off that first penny, Dan.
If you were buying Motley Crue and Poison, you were probably getting Warrant and Rat. You weren't getting Michael Bolton. They were actually really good at that. They didn't want you sending it back.
Well, I know that it's kind of funny where some of these businesses have gone right now too. I know that kind of the Star Vista cruise business was essentially built on the backs of the call centers and email and purchaser information for one of the other competing entities for that records business. And so it's funny to see where that data has morphed and what they are selling people. Star Vista now famously selling cruises like the Country Music Cruise and a bunch of other things to people that have a little bit more coin and time and money for those things. But I'm sure that data is going to be bought by somebody somewhere and redeployed in some other weird, maybe meaningful financially way. So
it seems to be a big thing now. I heard that the Spirit airline data was the best part of the bankruptcy sale. And
$10 million to Google. Yeah. Google did buy all the emails, all the customer tickets, all of the information to train its Gemini AI for $10 million as part of the bankruptcy sale there too. So yes, all those emails, all those customer service things mean something to somebody somewhere, right? So it's still get repurposed somewhere somehow. I'm just very curious to see what the next life of this is. But I will just say, R.I.P. Columbia House.
R.I.P. motherfucker.
Worth every cent.
Loving every minute of it.
That'll do it for News of the Month, Dan.
I'm Johnny Fairplay on Promoter 101, and I wouldn't lie about that.
It wouldn't be Promoter 101 if we didn't check out what Dan is saying over on X. And Dan, at the top of the podcast, you had some thoughts on X, but still see you're still firing at it. Maybe we just copy some of these into threads for this month. How about this one? When the phones go quiet on a summer Friday afternoon.
It seems to be the new normal, and we'll welcome it.
Especially in summer, Dan. I feel like the summer Fridays are a hard observation these days. You know, I think like most of the agencies are like hard between at least the 4th of July and Labor Day about this stuff. So you got a nice like 6-8 weeks there where it really does go quiet.
Well, now with festivals happening, people are traveling to festivals on Thursday. They're setting up on Friday, taking meetings, spending time with artists. They're in the field. They're traveling back Sunday and Monday. Maybe they're taking Tuesday just to dig out a little bit. And they're back to work on Wednesday and Thursday before repeating the whole process all over again in festival season. So if you're not traveling, you got a little bit lighter time at your desk to maybe catch up on some past stuff.
Yes, sir. I love it. How about this one, Dan? I thought this was pretty interesting. I think I would have made an outstanding personal assistant.
My OCD really does play into that a little bit, and maybe it's not too late, Luke.
Yeah, looking for a second career here, Dan.
Much as Dwight Schrute was the best possible assistant to himself, I truly think I could have been a great assistant.
Yeah, I have no doubt you would be a great assistant. Were you ever an assistant?
I was not.
Yeah, never had the assistant back.
There are days where Jason Zink has commented that I missed my calling.
You do love a good counter invite. I know that.
Do like a good invite.
This one's got to be some relevance and some story behind this. When the repair guys try to explain anything to me. You have some work going on at the house, Dan?
Oh, every day this week. It's a new place, right? So we're constantly having little adjustments. We're just getting it right. So plumber, electrician, handyman, they've all been here this week. And I got to say, if I understood what you were doing, I might have tried to tackle it myself. But well gifted at a lot of things. Handy, not so much with a hammer and nails.
Maybe not rewiring some electrical in your house. It's probably not a calling that you missed.
Definitely wasn't messing with the electronics or the plumbing, but I will hang a frame.
That's pretty good. You can find a stud, put a nail in a wall.
Ironically, I hung 4 of the 5 TVs throughout the house, and I could not, even with the stud finder, find the stud in the last room, and drove me a little fucking mad with speaking of my OCD.
That's when you got to get to the anchors, or you got to mount another piece of wood between the studs, Dan. Those TVs are heavy.
That was when I went on to ChatGPT to find out who the best handyman in Mill Valley when it comes to hanging and mounting TVs.
His name's Jeff White. He lives up the street, right?
If there's anyone who's less handy with power tools than me, it's probably Jeff. But no, I went with a fine Ukrainian guy named Arthur and his partner Gregory, and they've done an amazing job with every task I've given them. And I think Elodie has found much more confidence in the projects that have been done around the house since they've taken over that task.
Well, shout out Arthur and his partner there. Give him a nice plug here of the pod. That'll wrap it up for Tweets of the Month. Make sure you follow Dan over on X. He's at The Jew.
Hi, it's Kim Badir with City of Tacoma Venues and Events, appearing on Promoter 101. Glad to represent all Canadians everywhere, particularly those who have landed in the U.S. of A.
We are thrilled for this month's featured interview. Dan sat down with Pinnacle Entertainment Scott Sokol, talk about the ins and outs of boutique agencies that he's been working in since the early 90s, including some of the biggest acts in metal, from Hailstrom to Slayer to Mastodon. From his education to his philosophy, it is a full circle interview. Please enjoy Scott Sokol from Pinnacle Entertainment.
Very excited to have Scott Sokol joining us from Pinnacle Entertainment, one of the few agencies from upstate New York. And yet, of all of the agencies in the business, been a boutique for decades and always in the forefront of the conversation. You guys always have a couple acts on the bigger levels doing the circuits and have stayed relevant for years. So welcome to the podcast, and thank you so much for making time, Scott.
Thank you for having me.
So early on, John Dipmore started Pinnacle and had great success, right? You're talking like Oasis and some of the biggest metal bands in the world and the Spin Doctors. Great things very early on when you saw a lot of those size acts living at the William Morris's, ICM, CAA, maybe Premiere, very few outside that world. John was able to build an agency and bring in guys like yourself and have that success and random bands along the way of different skill styles. There's a lot of the metal bands, the White Zombies, the Panteras, the Descendants, the Mighty Mighty Bastos. Is that right?
That is correct.
So how does that happen? How does an agency survive the poaching lane of the big agencies the way that Pinnacle has for so many decades?
I mean, I think we just really instilled loyalty from both, the people that worked there and worked at Pinnacle, and also the people, the managers that work with us and the artists. You mentioned the Spin Doctors. The Spin Doctors got started, when I started working there, and John started the agency in 1990, and it was him, myself, and a woman named Vicki Wenzel. The Spin Doctors are a good example where they worked for 2 years, 3 years, and then we ended up doing a letter writing campaign to radio stations, i.e. we had the band in probably a dozen cities where they could sell out the 1,000-seater, the 2,000-seater. So we went to the local radio stations and asked them to write a letter that we would send to, at the time, the president of Epic Records was Richard Griffiths. And we would just fax, we were faxing stuff, these letters saying, hey, the band sold out, this theater or that venue in our market. Can you service us with a single to play? And we basically did a letter writing campaign. Probably by the time we were done, we had 24 radio stations from coast to coast sending letters. And David Sonnenberg, who was the manager at the time, was like, he was the one, working with us and working with Richard Griffiths and just saying, hey, let's take something to radio. Look what the band is doing. People are asking for the song or for a song. Let's give it to them. And so it just sort of built off of that. But I mean, it was the extra time and effort, I think, put into that, building it, getting people to do things that they wouldn't normally do to get, the band to the next level. And then it just sort of started rolling where, radio started playing, the original 24 stations started playing, and then it kind of spread from there, and then MTV, and it just went and went. But that's a good example of something where it was just the extra added thought going into it that we had the time to do to make it work, and, David Sonnenberg as well, and Richard Griffiths, everybody was hand in hand responsible. But that whole thing came from the road and from us coming up in conjunction with Sonnenberg with something different to do and to deliver to Richard.
How did you wind up at Pinnacle? How did you and Ditmar come together?
I was coming out of college, and when I was in college, I was doing two things. I was writing for I was the entertainment editor of our paper, and I was also working on the concert committee. And coincidentally, on that concert committee was Larry Webbin, who's over at the team right now. And we just started going, and getting things done. In fact, I was looking for something. And also Mike Taylor, who unfortunately, he was the senior member, and unfortunately he passed away. And I was looking back in 2023, but he was the senior guy over there. He was a year older. I was in the middle. Larry was a year younger. But I was doing that and doing the paper, and with the paper, I was basically getting free CDs and free concert tickets. And just at the time, publicists asked for a tear sheet if you reviewed a show. They just wanted a thick book. They didn't care that it was in a school newspaper that was, who knows if 10 people were reading it or 10,000. And then when I was graduating, I thought I wanted to write. So a band that I was quote unquote managing, that I was friends with, said, hey, we just got an indie record deal, and our publicist is this woman named Ida Langsam, and she's the publicist for the Ramones. So I heard that, and I was like, oh, that sounds interesting. And then at the same time, I had discovered the band Mother Love Bone. My entire universe was flipped on its head, because I was definitely one of those guys where it was Metallica to Motley Crue and everything in between. And then I saw that, and I was like, okay, this is something different. This is amazing. Life-changing experience. Met those guys, hung with those guys. And
it was like 91-ish, give or take?
I was going to say, it had to be like 89, 90, right in there.
Right before Ghost kind of really happened.
Right. So I was still in school, and I was speaking with a woman over at Concrete Marketing who was the liaison for Mother Love Bone. And I had gone to a bunch of their shows, followed them up and down the West Coast, kind of became friendly with the guys. And I said, when I was leaving school, I'm like, it's amazing you get to work with them. I want to do your job. And she said to me, no, you don't. My job sucks. And I'm like, really? And she said, what do you like? What's the thing that you like the most? And I said, going to the shows. She said, you should work at an agency, which I had no idea what that was. And she said, I know a guy who's leaving an agency and starting a new one. You should talk to him. And she put me in touch with John. And here we are for about, I want to say, the better part of the year. I was working. There wasn't enough work to be full-time at either one, so I did both. I split my week between the two for the better part of a year. And then at the end of the year, they both said, okay, we have enough work, got to come full-time, or it was less than a year. And which do you want to do? And Ida had been in business for a decade, maybe more. And John had been in business for, Pinnacle had been in business for like 6-8 months. I'm like, okay, you know what? I saw what the publicity thing was, which is the Ramones were cool, and hanging out with the Ramones was cool, but the rest of the artists, it was just a paycheck. And most of them really weren't very good. And I want to say I really had an awakening to that when I was tasked with having an article written in Billboard for one of these artists that I was just like, oh, this is bad. It's so bad. But I called the person who was supposed to write about it. I called the writer and I'm like, hey, can you get the story and whatever? And he stopped me and he said, if you can tell me one good thing about this artist, I will write the article. And I paused and I said, well, you know what? I can't. And he said, I appreciate that. And because you were honest with me, I'll write the article. But at that point in time, I was like, you know what? This is not for me. At least with the agency, you lived and died by your taste. But if you were passionate about a band, then you got to work with them. And there it was. And then, live or die by your own taste, basically. And I'd rather gamble on my own taste than gamble on just a random artist writing us a paycheck. There it is. And then we just kept going. The first couple years, I remember looking on the walls and seeing gold and platinum records from like Metallica, because John had worked on the first 2 Metallica records. He was their agent. The Scorpions, when he was at FBI, he'd worked on the Scorpions, and there might have been something from the Police or Sting or something. So he had a handful of gold and platinum records. I remember thinking to myself, I want one of those someday, one of those. And we signed. We had some established acts. We had 2 semi-established acts. One was Badlands, which was Jake E. Lee's band from Ozzy. And then the other was a band called Savatage, which is still kicking around. They were managed by John Goldwater. I can't recall who Badlands was managed by. And then we had these 2 new bands that that were just in the process of getting record deals. The Spin Doctors had released like a live EP, and Pantera had gotten the new singer and just got signed to a brand new label called Atco, which was a division of Atlantic. And it was hard because the Spin Doctors meant like 200 people in New York and nothing anywhere else. But we just thought they were great. And Pantera meant like 400 or 500 people in Dallas and nothing anywhere else. It was just a slog. I remember getting told when we were pitching Pantera for tours, we would get told, they're just like a shitty Metallica. I don't even know why you're wasting your time, by other agents saying this. And it was just, fortunately, it kind of gave the wherewithal to, all right, no matter what happens, I'm going to have to make this go myself. That was always the attitude. And it's just, even with White Zombie, I can remember when it started, it was so out there. The first tour we pitched him for, we were like, okay, well, we meet a little bit of people and we're really cool and blah, blah, blah. And I can't remember the act, but the agent came back and said, you know what, if you guys pay us $500 a show, we'll put you on the tour. And I was just like, you know what, fuck this. We just went out there and just built it on our own, did little packages and different things till things just caught, and with them, it was building and building and building. And then the Beavis and Butthead thing took it to another level, and it's been like that since day one, just building something that you had to get people to see your vision, to share your vision. That's it. We can, in my opinion, no matter if it's a club, a theater, an arena, a stadium, if you're passionate about an artist, you can drive them to those levels. I feel that, I believe that, because I've done it and everyone here's done it and they've seen how it works. And it's just us just driving it, obviously along with management and the artist. It's just everybody buying in, and we'll drive it, and we'll worry about, these days, we'll worry about if TikTok makes a thing out of it later. But at this point, we're just going to drive it, and because we think they're awesome. And we always had the philosophy of, we just don't want to sign 100 acts and hope one of them sticks. Let's sign the one that we really believe in and make it stick. That's really, and so there's the whole thing in a nutshell.
Well, I got some questions based on some of the stuff you said. So let's do some background based on what you said. Where did you and Webman apparently go to college?
We both went to college, and Mike Taylor as well, at Clark University in Worcester, Massachusetts. Pretty much at that time.
Love it. Okay.
We at the time, and this was I thought it was normal because hey, I didn't go anywhere else. We were so invested in music that we had a pub that had a better sound system than what was probably 100 or 200 capacity venues should have, and we had to book it twice a week with live acts. So
With
we
college concert committee.
yeah, college concert committee. So aside from that, once a semester big show outside or whatever, twice a week you'd have this. I would, Larry was way more involved, and Larry and Mike were way more involved in that. I was there for, a shorter period of time doing that. But the fact that we had to do it twice a week made it so, okay, we really had to know what our stuff, we had to know people's tastes, because if you had too many times where the bands played and there was no one there, well, then someone else was going to take over. And you had a budget, so obviously no school that I'm aware of does that anymore. But it was very unusual at the time. We got lucky and had no idea that that was something unusual. We thought that's what everybody did.
You made a comment about the fax machine being a thing. And at the time I was thinking about the thermo paper. I was like, it's the last time we'd stock thermo paper or turn on a fax machine. And every once in a while you see someone's signature that still has the fax number. You get a new venue, a PAC or something that wants you to fill out an application the first time you do a show with them, and they have your fax number still on their form. And it's just like, really? Is this form that old? That one hit me. The idea of getting a hangout with the Ramones. I mean, obviously you're talking about, this is 10 years after Rock and Roll High School happened, but like, so how iconic were they at that moment? Because they were the original punk band and they'd been at that level for a while. So that had to be the coolest thing in the world. And you mentioned that was the one upside was the Ramones. The rest of them you weren't into, but
Right.
it still had to be just such a huge thing hanging out with the Ramones.
The weird thing was I was 22 years old and really didn't appreciate it. It was like, okay, Joey's calling in. You got to talk to him and then set him up for this interview and tell him, put it and stay online, blah, blah, blah. So you do that. Or I think it was Gary Kerfurst. Was that the manager?
It sounds right.
Let's see if my memory may or may not be correct on that. And then it'd be like, oh, Joey wants to go to the CBGBs. Can you go with him? See a show tonight. And it's just like, it was like, because it was work and I was a kid and they were putting out like best of albums. They might have had like volumes 1, 2, 3 or something like that. So that was the campaign. It wasn't necessarily new music. So I think they were kind of they were obviously on a very upward momentum for a long time, and they kind of just leveled out. And I think I was there when they had leveled out. And it was just one of those things where I knew who they were. I appreciated their music, but it was work. So I wish if I could have gone back in time, I would have spent way more time with them and just talked their ears off way more than I actually did.
Just to clarify, so people don't send me the emails that I know are already coming, Danny Fields and Linda Stein originally managed the Ramones and then Gary Kerfer. So like, please don't send the emails. I looked it up.
When I was doing it, it was Gary Kerfurst.
Right. But I know I'm going to get the emails from people telling me the timeline. And
Right.
so
Okay.
just to acknowledge it, because save the emails. Don't fill my inbox.
Right. This was 1990, 91, right in there.
So and speaking of emails, one of my favorite things early on with podcasts is John Ditmore would send me emails. And if we had a guest on and they told a story and he was involved in any way in that story, he would say, not for publication, but that's not what happens. Here's what happened. Or call me when you have a moment. I'll break it down for you because it's a little bit of a long story, but it's a good story. But they only told a piece of it and they didn't really get it right. And his version, 9 times out of 10, was so detailed and so amazing that it was like, okay, like that was I wish we would have aired that version of it. But like there's constantly this thing. Everybody makes themselves the center of the story a little bit. John was great about that's not how that played out. And there were so many legendary acts that broke in his tenure. So there was a lot that came over that you get a record guy on or a venue guy or a promoter or, an agent or whatever telling a story about an act. And if John was involved and he thought that it was misrepresented, he'd send me the note.
Right. Hey, you know what?
Maybe not exactly accurate.
Right. Usually, and this was kind of our ethos from day one, as much fun as this is, and as much as basically what we're doing is bringing the party to town as far as, the artists go or whatever, the show, it's still a job. I guess it kind of came natural. I don't remember an actual sit down where this is how things are going to run, but we never drank at shows. We never, we always, dressed properly. It was always like, hey, as much as, this is fun and it's fun for everybody here, it's still a job. So you have to act appropriately and look and act appropriately. So a lot of times when the record label guy needs to be poured into the back of a taxi cab or needs a ride home or anybody else involved, it was, we were probably one of the few sober people before and after the show.
Well, all of you.
Yeah.
That's very music industry.
Yeah, it was just a thing. You know what? I never wanted that to be I wanted to be on my toes in case anybody, something went wrong. I wanted to make sure that, and I always had that ingrained in me that I wanted to be on my toes. And, there's definitely been incidents where before, during, after a show, there was a problem. And if I would have been, wasted, it never would have gotten solved properly. And I think people, you're always looked at, I always think about it like this. If I'm totally out of my head at a show, an artist is going to remember that when there's a problem that I can't fix. And a lot of times that's the only thing they would remember, you at your worst. So I try not to do that. That's just, I instill that in everyone today. It's just like, don't get wasted at a show. You want to get wasted on your own time. Go to a different show if you want to get wasted. Just don't go to one of ours.
So as an agency, from the early get-go, you guys have always been on both sides. And you were talking about Pantera and Spin Doctors. And even now, it's like you guys represent a spectrum and don't really compete with yourself in a lot of cases.
We definitely represent a spectrum of artists. My taste in music is such that I'll go back to the first, like when I was always an audiophile, and it drove me crazy that when you would get a record, either eventually it scratched or when you got a brand new record and it was staticky, so you'd hear the static, it would drive me bananas. I was always like, so when CDs came out, I was like, hallelujah, something that doesn't have these issues. And the first two CDs that I bought, one, it was Madonna's first album and Ozzy Osbourne's second album. So that was always my taste in music. I mean, some of my favorite shows that I've seen, and just to give you an idea, were, Pink, amazing. Rammstein, amazing. I just saw one of my top 10 shows that I've ever seen 2 weeks ago. I saw Muse in Milwaukee, amazing. Like, I love a great performer, a great show. It doesn't matter what type of music they do. They just have to move me. The recording, and it doesn't matter, the shows that I just mentioned are arena size shows, but it's a club, it's an arena. I just need to be moved by it, feel an emotion, and doesn't make a difference what type of music it is.
Yeah, that's a really big discrepancy between pop, metal, and different worlds. And it's obviously got to give you the ability to book a multiple of acts if you're legitimately interested in different genres, which I think if you listen to most people's Spotify list, you'd see that they don't tend to listen to the same thing all day long, that it tends to float genre to genre, that you'll find a country fan that's also into pop music.
Yeah, I listen to as much as my Spotify age, which is hysterical, is 17. So I listen to as much Slayer as I listen to Miley Cyrus, and that will be corroborated by anyone in my office. So it's just one of those things. I just like great music. It doesn't necessarily matter the genre.
Well, and I think the bands that you book represent that, right? Like Keane, Hailstorm, Slayer. That's pretty
it's all these different things. I mean, we have a new artist that Olivia in my office is working on called Bank Holiday, who are reminiscent, in my mind, to that Britpop movement. Brand new band that released one single so far, so probably most people, at least in the US, really won't know. But that's like that. We have a band from the UK also called Panic Shack. It's just something different, and it moved us all. That's the type of thing we like. It's really that simple. Does it move us? And I guess that's also something unique to the agency, is that we work fully as a team. Everything's a team effort. Everybody's bouncing stuff off each other, and we sign things as a team. And I'm not saying that, okay, you've got 6 people working on a project. What I'm saying is, hey, every person says, here's a new band. What do you think? And everybody gives their input. Hey, we really like this, really don't. And that kind of keeps our roster small and, and focused. And that's always been the philosophy, literally going back to 1990.
So I'm cheating right now and look at Polestar roster, and it's got a lot of acts that you represent for North America, but also shows South America for some, Asia, Australia. So it's a lot of global presence. So as a boutique agency, you guys are working the world in a lot of these cases, act for act. Does that create challenge when you're signing acts and booking them in different places across the world where you may not know the routing as well as you probably have it built into your head on how to get to Toronto from Detroit?
The only territory that we don't really dip into is Europe, because it's sort of like here, where you got to be at the ground level, for a new act to really know where, the right venue on the right night, the right promoter, et cetera. When you get to arena level, whatever, hey, you're probably it's a handful of people that are doing the artists in all the territories. So that's one thing. But like South America, there's, it's not even like here. There's as many people that I trust to book artists through South America as I trust to book artists in the state of New York. So it's a limited amount of people, or the state of California. It's a limited amount of people that I actually trust to shepherd our artists through the territory. Same thing with Australia, same thing in Japan. It's just, after doing this for 36 years, I've got the people that I 100% can send them there and not worry about it. I like to sleep at night. So I guess that's one thing. So it's a little bit easier. I think Europe's a little different, and the UK.
So Slayer reunited after breaking up and declaring there would be no more shows.
Well, they actually declared that there would be no more tours. So they were very specific about that, which they have not done.
Right. They picked some festivals and some big one-off markets, right?
Right.
They've popped around, but I think everybody thought they were done as far as the live. Right. So it clearly seemed like Carrie wasn't ready to be done and convinced the guys to come back, is what it seemed like from the outside. But I think everyone's happy that, at least in the metal world, that they're back together.
Right. I was going to say, and I don't think it's any one person as much as it was a group. It's Carrie and Tom together, always operating together, along with Rick Sales and Krista Muldaring and Ernie Gonzalez, who all work on the project with us. And it's a group decision with what they want to do. Plus, Carrie has his own thing going, which is fantastic in its own right.
They're clearly bigger now than they've ever been. The time off has made fans very excited about them coming back, and clearly the shows they're doing and the places they're picking are working up very well, and they're definitely picking their spots. It's got to be a great thing as an agent to have a band that's done the farewell tour, and you think maybe I've seen my last commission on this band, and get the phone call of, okay, we're actually ready to work again.
Yeah. I mean, you know what? They're great people, and it's one of those things where, as you probably know, rock never went away, but kids people under the age of 40 really weren't paying attention to rock until about a year or two ago. And then all of a sudden it started coming back, and kids under the age of 30 were discovering rock music, again. And whether that be them going back to some of the foundations of rock, like a Slayer or a System of a Down or whatever, or finding new artists like a Tsunami or a Knocked Loose or these type of things, it's become a thing, and Slayer's audience, while still having the older fans that are in their 50s and whatnot, suddenly have a new audience that's discovered them that's in their 20s. And those are the people that want to be in the pit because the people that are in their 50s have no desire to do that anymore for the most part.
One of the bands you work with just is constantly on the road, just workhorses. Can you talk about Hellstorm?
Yeah, they're a very unique artist in the fact that they're kind of game for anything. If it's got a guitar, or in some cases, even if it doesn't, they're up for playing with it and just trying to expand into new audiences. I'll give an example. Over the past 12 months, this has been their touring. They went out with Volbeat, then they took out Lindsey Sterling, then they're going to play dates with Lainey Wilson coming up, and then they're going to go out with Baby Metal in the fall. And this is a band that over the course of their career has literally toured with everyone from Eric Church to Avenged Sevenfold and everything in between, just to continue to expand their audience. I mean, I was at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame a week ago, and because we worked on an exhibit with Lizzie Hale. It's called, I believe it's You Will Remember My Name, and it's basically for women in hard rock. And, they're a band that's just kind of game from mixing it up to how to expand their audience.
When you're trying to create the next tour for an act like that, knowing that they could do anything, playing with an Eric Church or one of the biggest metal bands in the world, what's the plan of attack to do something to keep it creative?
We put together a hit list with them and management. I want to say there was like 75 artists on the hit list, and it ranged. It was Iron Maiden to Lady Gaga and everything in between. And we knew that, hey, you know what? We're not going to get 100 yeses, and we don't need 100 yeses. All we need is one. And that's what it was. And, the yes that we got this upcoming tour is Baby Metal, because we looked at their audience. We're like, okay, their audience is kind of fans of Japanese culture and fans of Comic-Con. So it's way different than anything Hailstorm's ever played in front of. It'll continue to expand their audience. We saw it work with Lindsey Sterling. She plays violin. So definitely not a rock artist at all. And it worked extremely well. So that's really the thought process behind it is, hey, what can we do that's different? The band doesn't want to play with two other Hailstorms. They want to play with something different.
You've had a career that's lasted decades in the business and have worked with acts of all sizes. What's your favorite part of the process?
Well, there's two things, really. The first one is, and you know what? And it comes, an established artist said this to myself and the manager about a month or two ago. And then another artist, a brand new artist, said it to me about 6 or 8 months ago. And this is the thing that gets me going. It's, you made my dream come true. And when you look into somebody's eyes and they say that, whether they're 50 or whether they're 25, it's just, that's what makes it all worthwhile. That's it. That is it. You're doing that for those artists when you're transporting the fans, even for 90 minutes, that it's like the best feeling in the world to see people going crazy for Mastodon or Ministry or whoever. It's just it's unbelievable. And the younger artist that I mentioned is a band called Guilt Trip. And they were a band that was heavily influenced by another artist that we represent named Machine Head. And myself and the singer went to the stage to see them do their first ever US appearance, because they're from the UK. And the look on their faces when one of their heroes shows up to watch them play was just unbelievable. It was just such a great feeling. And then they always end their set with a Machine Head cover. And I look to my right, and the singer, Rob Flynn's no longer standing next to me. I'm like, damn, I wish he would have seen it. And I'm standing at the back of the stage just watching them play. And then after the show's over, they walk by me and they're like, did you see it? I'm like, did you see what? Did I see what? It's like Rob went into the pit when we played that song. Like, do you know what it's like to play that song and then one of your heroes is in the pit while you're playing it? You're staring at him. And I'm just like, I do not know what that's like, but clearly from the smiles on your faces, it was pretty amazing. And just seeing, that stuff, seeing Mastodon play with the Melvins and them say, this was a dream come true. And they actually, when they played, this was around Sick New World, they did a combined encore where the two bands played together. So they rolled out all the drum kits and all the guitar amps and everything together. The two bands played together and they were just blown away. But that happened. Like, that was a dream of theirs. And I didn't even know it at the time that was a dream of theirs. And just seeing that look and all those things happen within the last 6-8 months. And you just see it time and time again. I mentioned that band Pangshack that did their first tour of America. Most of it sold out. They were like, this is unbelievable. This is what it's like. They were in a Sprinter van. They're like, and this was the greatest touring vehicle ever. I'm like, please tell me that 10 years from now. But, just that type of thing, seeing artists grow, seeing a band heavier than heavy named Peeling Flesh that's all of a sudden selling out all of their shows. And you're just like, okay, this is something. And we're just seeing one after the other. A band called Haywire from Boston, their shows are all selling out. It's just insane. And it's just, or Villanova, a very unusual band from Germany, and they're out merching almost everybody on the tour. And you're just like, okay, this is working. And just like the new bands are as, I diverged into that lane.
No, I think the idea that you're this excited about your young artists is refreshing in this day and age in our business.
Yeah, I love the young artists, but I also love putting together the perfect package for Mastodon and them launching a brand new record and just having, in my opinion, the best album of their career and getting that tour launched. Putting together the perfect bill for Slayer at the Forum that I know fans will be talking about for years to come, and watching the shows just blow out in less than 30 minutes. For next year, speaking of farewell tours, Ministry is going to be doing a farewell tour with KMFDM and Pigface, and both of those artists are also doing their farewell tour. So it's like a triple farewell tour, which I don't know if that's even been done before. And working with Steve Davis and Al, Uncle Al, as I refer to him, to put this stuff together and really make it work and just make them, just the joy that not only are they're feeling from the fans and the sold out shows and people going crazy, but the joy the fans are feeling by being transported away for a few hours from anything that's, that's negative that's going on with their lives, whether it be, the news or their significant other or their job or whatever it is that's not going well in their lives. They can be transported for at least a portion of time. And that's what we do. That's our business.
When I was in high school, Ministry did it 3 nights, the Gothic in Denver. The image of the chain link fence across the front of the stage just made them look so fucking hardcore. I think maybe it was Land of Rape and Honey tour or something, but it was just like the most intense, scary band in the world because of that fence. And it was kind of funny because at loadout, the fence came down in 2 seconds and it was just like, it was a normal show again, but the show was over and it was just like, it's just the image. But knowing the image of the chain link fence and the lighting was going to make it so dramatic was so Broadway-esque and so genius. It was an amazing piece, but it stuck with me for 40 years. It's like, what a cool thing.
That's it. We're creating events. We're creating moments for people. I had a moment in Detroit earlier this week. I was with Rick Franks and Rob Hoffman, the manager for Extreme. And here's Extreme, probably close to 40 years deep into their career. They're opening for Motley Crue, seeing them perform. And I remember seeing them in college and, and watching those videos and all that stuff. And then seeing them to look and sound just like they did then and just blow people away. And, and to quote Nuno, he's like, I hope we were better than when you were in college with 40 more years of experience under our belts. But just to see that and just to see the excitement, even from them, even though they've been doing this for so long, it's such an amazing feeling for me, and also for the fans, and just to see fans appreciate a guitar hero again. And just great songs and a great performance. To watch Gary do splits off the friggin' drum riser, and I'm just sitting there going, he's older than me. How the hell does he do that? So,
the 35 years ago, More Than Words was the song of the summer. Extreme,
Right.
the hottest song.
Yep.
It's got to be a thing because everybody remembers that song exactly in time. It's got to be one of those things that if you're gonna perform it, you got to nail of all of the songs. You got to nail that one, right?
Right.
Especially them opening Motley Crue, Tesla. It's a really cool package. If you're into hair band from the 90s, like that's the shit.
Right.
Like
They definitely
Harris did a great job with that package with Dennis and those guys. Like that's a great show.
100%. I think they did a great job from top to bottom. They gave fans value. And I have to say, Motley Crue is performing as good as they did and sounding as good as they did 10 years ago. More. Like, I really thought they were great. I thought they had a great set list and everything else. So kudos to them for really putting something together that's special that I think fans will remember, because you know what? How long are these artists going to continue to go out there and do 30-date tours? I don't know. So see it while you can.
It was funny because I went to Denver and I bumped into Pete and he was like, "You staying for Crew?" I was like, "I'm here for Crew." He's just like, "Okay." He's just like, "You should stay for Crew." I'm like, "Literally, dude, I'm a huge Motley Crue fan. I'm here for Crew." Like, Def Leppard played earlier. They closed that show. But I thought Poison stole that show, to be honest.
Oh, I'm right there with you. Poison went for one of these artists that I thought was like, all right, they had some hits and it was a cool thing and whatever, but how many diehard Poison fans do you know? And then seeing them perform, like, okay, they're performing like it's 1985.
Brett Michaels' voice is there. The band is great, and they work their ass off.
Right.
The fans connect, and they didn't have the production.
Right. They played early and they smoked everyone.
They totally did. I thought Def Leppard was way better than Motley Crue, but Motley Crue was the loudest show I've ever seen.
The first time I saw Motley Crue, I want to say it was on the Girls tour. They were the loudest show I'd ever seen at that point in time. Like, my ears were ringing for like 2 days.
I remember my dad took me to see them on Dr. Feelgood tour because it was like the cassette. I'd bought some music before, but that was the one I found. I became a Motley Crue fan. And my dad took me to the show, and I remember the next day, my ears were still ringing.
Yeah, I remember I was in high school, and we didn't even go for Motley Crue. We went for Whitesnake, because Whitesnake at the time, besides David Coverdale, and I can remember this, it was Adrian Vandenberg on one guitar. It was Vivian Campbell on the other guitar. It was Rudy Sarzo on bass and Tommy Aldridge on drums. So you had the rhythm section, the infamous Ozzy Osbourne rhythm section, and then added to it Dio's guitar player and Adrian Vandenberg. So it was just like, this was a meeting of the gods or whatever, as far as I was concerned. So I wanted to see that. And then we're like, well, we're here. We should stick around for Motley Crue, because Motley Crue was like, that's like whatever. And then saw them and we're like, whoa, wait a second. This is something.
So packaging like that too leads to what I will make the final question of the day. And that is, when a band decides they're going to tour and you get that phone call, what's the creative process of where you're going to go, how big you're going to play? Are you going to support? Are you going to headline? And where are you going to attack it from? How do you put that plan together?
It basically starts with, okay, obviously the time period and whatever, but if I can and it's more of a gut feeling than anything else, because this is when you were asking before about what are the things that really excite you, it's one of the top 3 things, putting together the perfect package, which I kind of touched on with the Slayer shows that they're doing. But if you can put together the perfect package, people will come. And while you still want to be ticket price sensitive, and one thing that I drill into my guys or my people is that ever since the all-in ticketing thing came around, that about a year and a half ago, don't worry about the ticket price that's on the offers. Just ask what the ticket price is at checkout, because that's the only thing the fans are going to see. So put together the strongest package that you can, the thing that the fans go, right now, artists only make money from two ways: ticket sales and t-shirts. So both of those fall on us. Those are the majority of the way people or artists are making money. So they're on the road all the time now, much more so than pre-pandemic. So if there's 30 shows coming through, name the market, Chicago, on any given month, what's going to make a fan go to our show over somebody else's? Well, the only thing better than one band that they like is two bands that they like. And the only thing better than two bands they like is three bands that they like, and so on and so forth. I used to use the analogy that you got to think of artists that are in someone's record collection, that the record is sitting next to that other record. Now it's, on someone's playlist, but that's it. I mean, it's just really buckling down and going, okay, what's going to be the package that gets people so excited that it becomes an event? Because ultimately that's our job, is to help the artist create an event, and management create this event that people can't miss. And then, you know what? Everything else will work itself out. Because somehow, some way, when you have an amazing package, the money works itself out. The ticket price works itself out. All the other things, the right venue, the right day of the week, they all work themselves out, because when, and this is, I think, the key to everyone's success, agents, promoters, managers, artists, it's all about the passion. If people can hear the passion in your voice, even though maybe what you're selling them may not be their favorite artist, hey, not everyone's favorite artist is band XYZ. But if they can hear it in your voice that you've put together this amazing thing, that you really feel it in your gut, they're going to go for it. They're going to go, okay, he believes in it, we believe in it too. And they'll just go the extra mile. I also love getting my hands dirty in the marketing and the look and everything else. And while we do have people that, people that just work on the marketing alone, I love getting my hands dirty in marketing too, and trying to come up with ideas, promotions, etc., to help people along. Because you know what? A promoter's got 30 shows that month. You give them a little bit of help, as much as you can. We're all in this together as far as trying to sell those tickets and sell out those houses. The whole thing's a team effort.
Love that sentiment. I don't know that it's been a while since I've heard an agent say something like that, but man, I love the philosophy.
Right. I mean, we're in a relationship business. I mean, that's really what it is. So that whether it's the artist, the managers, the promoters, whatever, it's all about that. We're all trying to do the same thing. We're all brand building, because the moment an artist decides that I'm leaving the garage, you're a brand. You're building your brand. That's what we're trying to do, is help build the brand, work as a team effort. I mean, everybody that works at Pinnacle, the one thing I can say is that we're all lifers. Every single person. You know what? It's, as you know, because you obviously do this, and you have a podcast dedicated to it. It's a 24/7 job. Yeah, you get that week off between Christmas and New Year's where people usually leave you alone, but otherwise, it's 24/7. You're at, when are you on vacation fully, where you can turn off your phone and leave it somewhere? It doesn't happen. So you have to be a lifer, whether you're 25 or in your 50s, like me, that's it. And you can if you're a lifer, and if you're enthusiastic about these things and passionate about these things, they will work. That's just my belief.
I love it.
I'll give you one parting thought that when people get too stressed out, and I say this on a regular basis internally, and sometimes I say it externally too. Like when I was growing up, my best friend is a doctor. He became a doctor. He has a real job, unlike the rest of us. We get to Peter Pan ourselves forever. But at no point in time, there is never an issue where the patient dies on the table. So we'll always be able to figure it out. It may take a little time, but we'll be able to figure out any issue, any problem, anything that comes up. Because realistically, the only things we can control, because most of the stuff's not in our control, but the only things we can control is our attitude and our effort into putting into these things and getting everybody on board, with that. That's all.
Gotta love that. Nobody's dying.
Right. No, at no point in time have you ever worked on a show, Dan, where everybody died if you did something a little bit wrong.
A lethal promoter, although
Yeah.
might be good for the ministry marketing.
It is his final tour, so maybe on the last day, you never know.
Scott, I can't thank you enough for making time for us on Promoter 101. I know I've been chasing you for a little while for this, so I appreciate you agreeing to it. And I'm thrilled that you had this conversation with me today because it was fun.
Thanks. Take care, Dan.
This is Lenore Kinder. I work for AEG Presents, and you're listening to Promoter 101.
And now a quote for this month, Luke. The secret of getting ahead is getting started. This quote is brought to us by our friend, Mark Twain.
Mark Twain, famous for eating frogs in the morning, you know? That's very in line with Mark Twain. Have you heard that one, Dan?
Really?
He never ate frogs in the morning, but he would always say about getting started, if the worst thing you can do every morning is swallow a frog, your day can't be that bad. An analogy for doing the hard things first.
Okay. Well, I've never heard that before, but I have a weird visual on this one.
Try it sometime. It's difficult.
Going down on a frog?
Yeah, exactly.
Jason made me try frog legs when we were in Nice, and it was a little gamey.
Yeah, a little chewy.
I much preferred the gelato. By the way, one of the most romantic places I've ever been with Jason was Nice. It was summer. The sunsets were beautiful. People were drinking wine. Everybody was holding hands and making out. I was with my business partner.
Holding hands and maybe making out.
We've had some interesting moments together. This one was one of the more intimate things. Although he did once book us for a couples massage in Montreal, just for laughs. It's like the regular massages are all booked, but they can get us in for a couple massage, and that way we can both still get a good massage.
When they write the book on U2 at the end of it, I'm sure that'll make it somewhere in there. U2 and Eddie Izzard and Just for Laughs, couples massage.
Just for Laughs in Montreal alone is its own story. Probably narrated by Daniel Glick from Evenco when it comes together.
Love it.
And Nick Farkas.
Some fun times in Montreal.
This is Mary Claire Borgelli from Live Nation, Promoter 101, best podcast in the music industry.
Where in the world does the time go? Thank you so much for tuning in to this, the 247th episode of Promoter 101. Until next time, friends, if you miss us in between podcasts, or you just want to catch up, drop us a line. You can hit us an email, steiny@promoter101.net.
Thanks again so much for listening. We'll be back on September 24th and the last Thursday of every month moving forward.
Our September episode will feature City Winery's Michael Dorf.
Hi, I'm Michael Dorf. I'm a founder of City Winery. I also founded a little club a long time ago called The Knitting Factory, and I'm excited to be on Promoter 101.
Excited for that interview and excited for everything else. In the meantime, wishing you sold out shows for the month to come.
Cheers.
Call your mother.
The buffet called Promoter 101.